apps and the operating system needs to run differently. But as they prepare all this with developers behind the scenes, moving over platforms, you can start to see maybe they have a new 12-inch MacBook with this ARM chip in it with their own design processors. Maybe they have, slowly after that, a new MacBook Pro. But I think at the higher end, the iMacs and iMac Pros and Mac Pros of the world, people are like, oh man, I just bought an iMac and now they're going to move chips. Like that's not anywhere, I don't think, anytime soon. We might see this announcement at WWDC that they have begun working on it and will start replacing Intel in maybe their first laptop this year or something like that. But I think, we just got Mac Pros in the studio. If you're expecting this new iMac refresh, I think that'll have Intel chips. I don't think it's going to be straight through the lineup all at once. That being said, I'm super looking forward to it.
I mean, I'm going to be totally honest. I don't really know much about ARM chips, and I've always been, I almost only ever use Mac at work, so I'm totally a Windows guy, and that's not a great excuse for that, but I've always used AMD or Intel, so I guess the main way I'm seeing it from what you've described so far is compare it to like an iPhone and an iPad. Now Apple's creating their own chips, and it's a new way. From the couple things I've read, it's very confusing, but efficiency seems to be a huge reason.
Efficiency and power. So I mean, they've put these chips in iPad Pro and iPhone, right? So like the universal language, even if you're on Windows, is like performance numbers and benchmarks speak to you, right?
Yeah.
So imagine in the thermal envelope of an iPad Pro, they've put a chip that is more powerful and more efficient than the chips in the MacBook Air. They perform better and they're more efficient. So now imagine like making a bigger version of that in the MacBook Air. It already outperforms the MacBook Air on paper and benchmarks. So you can imagine like Apple putting their own chip in the MacBook Air. Suddenly that's a really impressively powerful laptop. Yeah. And when you have more thermal envelope and you have like a better form factor, now you imagine giving it MacBook Pro type space, an even bigger chip, and the efficiency is already great because you already see iOS is so well optimized. You imagine macOS being well optimized as well, and you toss like 16 gigs of RAM and a gigantic Apple designed chip in a MacBook Pro, that thing is going to scream.
Yeah.
So I think the promise of what could happen from the higher overhead you get from moving out of just an iPhone or just an iPad and moving into a big old laptop that's the exciting part.
Okay, so it's just the next step in Apple's ecosystem getting that much stronger and creating that much more of a gap between, everything working seamlessly together and parts that we're used to and everything else that have to mesh together as best as possible.
And it's just smart by them. I mean, we already know they're great with vertical integration. But we've seen their hints of it. They already make the T1 chip like we talked about. They have started to put their own chips in their machines. But basically taking your reliance away from Intel, taking that huge, not that burden off of Intel, but just not having to wait for Intel's improvement anymore for your own incremental improvements is also huge. So you can imagine, when the new iPad Pro comes out and it's twice as fast as the last one, imagine that in a laptop. Like there's so many different doors that open up from Apple. Essentially, it's just as big of a story. It's just as big of a story for them to move away from Intel as it is for them to make their own chips. So it's twofold.
Yeah, true.
I'm ready.
Cool. When is WWDC again? There's a specific date, right? It's very soon, I believe.
It might be by our next episode, and we might have a lot to say about it when it comes out. But WWDC 2020 is expected. Let me find the exact date. June 22nd.
Oh, my birthday.
So
cool.
Nice. Yeah. So we have an episode maybe like a day or two after that.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Speaking of big conferences that are supposed to be going on, we've officially missed Google I/O. And what was that? It was set to happen May 12th to 14th. Obviously, COVID 2020 happened, and now they just straight up canceled it. But I guess what we were all hoping for out of that the most is the Pixel 4a and now that it's been officially canceled, we were all waiting for it. Then they announced Android 11, but we still don't see anything about Pixel 4a. So where is it?
The beta. Yeah, where is
Where-
Pixel 4a? Huh. Yeah, so last year at Google I/O was Pixel 3a. So that was the first budget edition Pixel, and so we sort of, with the cancellation of Google I/O, now the Pixel 4a is sort of in limbo. That was a phone we were looking forward to a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
I mean, like, it's funny because we know mostly about it because Google is fantastic at hiding everything and definitely not leaking every little piece of information about it. So we kind of have all of it, but it was supposed to be May. Then there were some rumors of June, but now the rumors seem to be July-ish, like a week or two into July. So we're still waiting for that. Do you want to go over kind of like this? I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast at all, right? What we're expected to see from it?
maybe not, but we can go over it. For
Yeah,
sure.
let's do a quick overview of what we're expecting to see.
So I think contextualizing it just to have on our radar what Pixel 3a was. Pixel 3a was not the most powerful, not the most high-end phone, not even the most well-built, but it had the best camera for the price.
Mm-hmm.
It was $400, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It launched and it just has basically the same camera as the Pixel that came before it. Awesome phone. Awesome
For
budget phone.
sure. Yeah.
So, for Pixel 4a, we're sort of looking forward to a bit of a design update, but again, still, it's Google, it's a Pixel, it's not the highest end hardware. We're going to see probably Snapdragon 730, maybe 6 gigs of RAM.
I think that was a big thing that everyone was excited about was the same amount of RAM as the flagship.
Yeah.
Which is pretty big.
Then you're talking maybe 64 or 128 gigs of storage. Probably a full screen display, probably like a 1080p OLED display. But we're seeing all sorts of different rumors still about whether they do a punch out.
I think last I heard was hole punch, which is interesting because I would consider that more advanced than the regular Pixel 4, and it's horrific for which is I still use it. I still hate it. I still would prefer the like bathtub notch, to be completely honest. So
Oh my god.
hole punch is really neat, and I hope they follow that route and not the this like asymmetrical crook.
Right. So, something like we're also seeing 3,000 milliamp hour battery, something like that, and probably also a similar build quality. But again, new higher end cameras, same recording, basically looking like Pixel 4 camera, which is, in my opinion, not even gonna lie, still my favorite single camera setup. They're not gonna have an ultra wide probably, they're not gonna have a telephoto, it'll just be a single camera setup. And that's sort of the same formula. A little updated design for the 3A, now you have a 4A. The question now, though, is this is coming out after we just saw iPhone SE, which is now, Apple's in this $400 brand new phone, pretty good camera space. How do you think those two line up?
I mean, as someone who's used Pixels for the last 2 years, I honestly think SE just blows it out of the water. If this is what we're looking at, the biggest thing you think about right here is like iPhone and Pixel cameras, even though you said Pixel is your favorite, they are so close, like so remarkably close, and Apple's even better in some ways, but like either way, you're thinking of S-tier cameras. But then immediately look to the processor, which is usually one of the next most important things. And
Yeah, the future proof wise. Okay, so here I'll break down what I think the Pixel wins at,
Okay.
and what I think
Yeah,
the iPhone
let's
wins
go.
at. So Pixel 4a will beat iPhone SE, in my opinion, at the camera by a little bit. I mean, they're both going to be very good for the price, but if they're both $400, I'll give the edge to the Pixel 4a's camera, single camera setup.
Okay.
The Pixel 4a has a headphone jack. It's supposed to have a headphone jack. That's an advantage because the iPhone SE doesn't. And that's it.
So one other thing, if it has
Maybe
hole
the
punch
screen?
cut out, yeah, like that.
Okay.
I'll take a hole punch cut out over big bezels any day.
True, yeah.
But like to me, I don't think the camera being better, like giving something the edge, isn't enough of a reason to buy it. I don't think like giving something the
just
edge means it's so much tiny better.
Yeah.
I mean, the ultimate thing is if you prefer Android over iOS.
Right, it's
You're
going to be a
gonna
bunch of little usability things, like Android over iOS is one, headphone jack is one. Also, where they put the fingerprint reader will be another one.
It sounds like it's gonna be on the back.
Which I think is fine.
I think that's
I mean,
great.
The iPhone SE is just the home button, which everyone already knows and is used to, and that's fine too. But I really like the back fingerprint reader, so that could be a little thing.
Yeah, that gives you the benefit of having the hole punch cut out like we talked about, and both of them right now are actually winding up being almost improvements because we're all wearing masks all the time. So like having an actual physical fingerprint sensor seems to be this like 2020 out of the blue like big improvement.
OnePlus 8. Honestly, most of the phones I'm using now, I'm using fingerprint over Face ID, Face Unlock. So but when you look on the other side of the aisle, you have iPhone SE, and you're going to have iOS, which for a lot of people is where they want to be. Battery life is maybe a toss-up. We don't know how the battery is on the Pixel 4a yet, but we'll see. And of course, you have performance. You have the latest Apple chipset versus Snapdragon 730. I think that's a clear win for Apple. Then you get to overall value. When you're looking at this price, how long does this phone last for $400?
Yeah.
If the iPhone has twice as many years of software updates, that's major. That's a major key for that phone. So iPhone SE is probably going to win that value department. And yeah, it might tie on camera be a little worse and has a little bigger bezels, but
here's something to consider. I've noticed a lot of people talking about iPhone SE battery life, and people seem to be all over the place on what they're getting. You found it to be pretty good, but you are someone who doesn't play a lot of games. I've read a lot of stuff saying people who play games on their phone, because it's a smaller battery using an A13, it is very power hungry because when you're gaming, you're using that so much more. So people are apparently chewing through iPhone batteries.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
I would describe a lot of my use of an iPhone especially as pretty standard. If I'm not doing gaming, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, taking photos, web browsing, email, that sort of thing. I could do that all day on an A13 because that's just sipping power. But at the end of the day, the A13 is new and it's the highest end chip with this huge amount of power when you want to put it towards something. So even though it's only a 768p display, if you're gaming, it's going to start to really chew through power. And when you're at that max power on a tiny battery, you can chew through it. So that's good to note, is that if you are gaming a lot on your phone, you probably don't want to get a budget phone.
Yeah, I mean, if you're picking between two of them, I guess between 4A and SE, you're going to pick, do I want the best performance on my phone? And then you probably go SE, but then you realize you're going to need a battery bank, or you're going to be plugged into the wall at home. Or is it am I fine with a little bit worse of an experience and overall the processor playing the game to its max potential, but I'm okay with the fact that I'm on the bus and I don't have a place to plug it in, or I'm on the train and I can play for hours and hours. The Pixel 4a is going to be able to play those games for longer on its battery life because it has a smaller, less power hungry processor and a bigger battery.
Yeah, I don't know as much about the Snapdragon 730. That might not. Maybe I don't know if that trade-off is even going to be that great. A 3,000 milliamp hour battery. But this is why we review the phones, is we have to test them and see. But yeah, it's an uphill battle now that you're fighting Apple for $400. That'll be interesting.
So also interestingly, there were some rumors of a Pixel 4a XL coming out. Unfortunately, now it seems to be there's no chance that happens. I mean, all they were looking at was because it's bigger, it has a bigger battery, but it was going to add the second camera, which everyone assumes is telephoto, like the Pixel 4. So
it would just be a cheaper Pixel 4.
Pretty much. I wonder, would it have? I'm guessing it had hole punch cut out, so it would look better than the Pixel 4. Again.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I've been using Pixel 4 because I'm testing new Android beta, but it's you get used to that forehead pretty quickly. If you're just staring at the forehead, you're like, oh, this is so ugly. Why did they make it like this?
That's the issue.
As far as buying it,
you forget it, and then you notice it, and then you're like, that stinks.
And you're like, why did I buy this?
I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah, and then only other thing I have. So I have a scenario here, because at this point, Pixel